Well, welcome back, folks. Now we're going to go ahead and install the wiring harness on the YL1 frame. But before I do that, a couple things I want to talk about in terms of how I prepped the bike to get it ready for this step. You notice in the shot right now, and I hope this lighting isn't too harsh. I know it's kind of bright, but it gets a little dark down in here when you're working. You can see I've pre-mounted the screws, the 6mm screws for the ignition switch, which will go right there, as well as where the voltage regulator will mount here. The reason I pre-mounted those, I chased the holes, cleaned them out from the repaint that I did. The screws are all different sizes, so I pre-sorted them and put them in their proper holes. They're different lengths. They're all 6mm. So that when it comes to the assembly of those components, just it's very straightforward. You'll notice also I temporarily mounted the headlight shell here with temporary hardware. That's just hardware store bolts right there holding the headlight shell in place. And the reason I did that is when I fish the wiring through, I want to get the right length that will go up into that headlight shell so that I don't have to bend and rebend the tabs here that hold the wiring in place, because then it'll get brittle and there's a possibility they could break off. Just a little side note, you'll notice in the background there my Toro snowblower. I got it apart. I've got to replace the main drive wheel up underneath there, and I'm waiting for parts. And so I took it apart the other day, and as soon as I get the parts, I'll have to get on and getting that drive wheel replaced. Back to the little Yamaha. One of the challenges I have with this bike is that the wiring, when I took it apart, it was a real mishmash. Nothing seemed to be in the correct location. The wiring, which I believe should go up through the inside tube here, come out of the hole where you see the tape, and then along the left outside of that upper steering head frame, that would be right in here, was looped underneath, and the wiring came up like this underneath and came up into the headlight shell. I don't think that's correct how I found it, simply because Yamaha put these mounting tabs on the frame in a couple of spots, and I believe those are to capture the wiring. The coils mount right there. There's one that goes on this side where those two holes are, and there's a similar set of holes on the opposite side where the coils will mount. Back to the swing arm and that hole we just talked about for the wiring, and you can see the harness is coiled up right here. There's the little grommet that I'm going to fit into that bottom hole cross tube in the swing arm right there. So it's going to be a little awkward to get at. I'm not sure how good of a shot I can get of that, of me installing it. I'll do my best and try to keep my head out of the way. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to lubricate this grommet with a little dielectric grease and then see if I can't get it up inside of that hole. A little dielectric grease. I'm going to spread the grease around, make this grommet as slippery as I can. The hole is actually on this side, on the left side, so we'll see what we can do here. There, the grommet slipped right in. So now that I have the grommet in place for the wires from the loom, that would be, see if I can find them here a second. That would be these two. We can go ahead and proceed with getting this installed. So that's how the wiring loom will go. And then I'm going to start by fishing the part that goes forward to the headlight shell up through the inside of this tube. And I believe, based on, again, the location of these frame clamps, these built-in frame clamps or tabs, it exits here, lays along here, and goes up into the headlight shell. So starting with this end right here, I'm going to fish it up through. You'll notice I put a little temporary masking tape here just to protect the paint here in case I thump and bang around a little bit. Fit those end connectors through. One at a time like that. These are the connectors for the ignition coils, which mount right here. These wires will also exit this hole, I believe. Again, the original wiring wasn't correct the way it was laid out. These are the wires for the horn mounts right up under here. At this point, it's really an estimate of where this needs to be positioned. I know from looking at the wiring diagrams that for the coil wires, there's 4 of them. There's an orange and a brown, and a gray and a brown. And I believe the orange and the brown go to the left and the gray and the brown go to the right. If memory serves, if I've got that wrong, they're easy to reverse. But here's one set. I'm going to go around the other side and pull the other set of coil wires through. Like that. So now I have both sets of coil wires out and the harness getting pretty close to its final position here at the front. I believe the harness will go something like that, right there. That's how it will mount. Again, the coils go here, and these coil wires will go underneath. And to reiterate, if I have these going the wrong color to the wrong side, it will be very easy to switch later. I'm not going to bend these tabs over so I have room to work with this. I'll bend those and lock those down at a later time. But I think right now that's pretty close at this point to where the wire harness will go. You have to allow a little bit for the steering head to turn. Now comes the tricky part. This is the balance of the wiring harness here. These are the wires that go to the stator assembly down here, along with the neutral light switch. I believe what happens at this point is this, the balance of this wiring gets fished down through a hole here next to where the air cleaner sets. These wires that go to the stator and the neutral switch will get fished out underneath here and will end up coming out in here. And the rest of these wires, most of them, will go on to the tail light like that and the brake light switch. These will go to the rest of the wiring loom from the battery that will fit up in here in the regulator. So I'm going to move around to the other side of the bike to see if it makes it a little easier for me to do this and not block your view, what I'm attempting to do here. And this might be just a little bit fiddly. There's a cutout right here in the frame. You can't see it from your perspective. But there's an obvious relief cut in the frame here inside, or a plate that they welded in. And I believe that was put there for the wiring. I've got the wiring started. Come back around to this side. All right, there's the 4. Actually, there's 5. There's the 5 wires for the stator. Here's the neutral light switch wire. So at this point I've got the wiring pulled down into the lower section of the frame. Here's a connector for the regulator. As well as a couple other connectors right here. So I've got everything complete pretty much down here the way it needs to be. These are in approximately the right position. Now I've got to get the brake light wires, switch wires, and the taillight wires through a grommet that you can't see that's right up in here. Now that original grommet was in pretty rough shape, so I just happen to have an identical grommet size-wise in my kit. Once I fish the tail lamp and brake lamp wires through the grommet, the brake light switch wires will go down through that swing arm that we just talked about a few minutes ago, and then I'm going to fish this for the tail light up, and there's some tabs up here underneath that you really can't see. You can, and I think this goes like this up to the tail light. So I'm going to apply a little dielectric grease to that grommet on the inside, make it a little slipperier. A little dielectric grease. And I'm going to put a little dielectric grease on the wiring sleeve here. Make that a little slicker. Again, that's just to aid its transition through that grommet. I think I'll do the brake lamp switch wires first. Then I'll feed these through next for the tail lamp. Okay, that goes to the tail lamp. This goes to the brake light switch. Again, I'm going to have to finesse this wiring a little bit over time here. Now we're going to go ahead and see if we can't get this brake light switch wire fished down through that grommet and out the end of the swing arm. There are a couple of tabs here on the inside of the frame to capture the wire. I just got to make sure I've got enough length here. I know you probably can't see much of this because of where it's at. In fact, I can't even see much of it. Going here as much by feel as anything else. Okay. Got the wires up through the grommet. I'm going to have to make a hook to snag those wires and pull them through. I'm just going to use a piece of copper wire here. I keep a lot of this around. See if we can't fish that through. What I'm doing is working it up and pulling it at the same time with the hook. I'm going to use a pair of forceps here to see if I can't just grab the end of the wires and pull them through. An alternative way to do this would be to fish through a wire first and, like a piece of copper, tie it off to the wires and then pull it through. That would be an alternative method. Okay, we got the wires through. You can see the wiring has been pulled through right here for the brake light switch. That's the mount for the switch right there. And of course these can be moved back and forth when the time comes to mount the switch. So I have the wires for the brake light switch captured in those frame clamps, those metal clamps. There's two of them. I know you can't see those. Now it's just a matter of taking the brake tail lamp wires and tucking them away up underneath here temporarily. And again, I'm not going to completely close the clamps. I'm just going to position them just a bit, just to hold the wire and capture it so that it doesn't fall out. I'll have to get a grommet here. These wires will pass through a grommet right here, and I'm going to have to fill around a little bit to reposition this wire. Something like that. So that's really the process of installing wiring on this little Yamaha. Again, I'll have to finesse the fitment of the wiring as I tie things together. The stator assembly, mount the regulator, the ignition switch, mount the brake light switch on the rear swing arm, and start adding components now to continue on with tying up the wiring. There's supposed to be what they call I think a pad or a box that fits in here for the battery. That is no longer available. The bike did not have one when I got it, so I'm going to have to rig up something for the battery to sit on right here, and the regulator will mount right in here. That we've already talked a little bit about the regulator. I think that's going to be it for this video, folks. Any questions, drop me a note. Otherwise, as usual, thanks for watching.